Thank you for coming, those who are here in person and on Zoom, and also on Instagram.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. We appreciate that. If you haven't met Nika Lawrie, well, you're going to tonight, and she's really going to give us a treat. The topic, if you don't know tonight, is how toxins are hurting you and what to do about it. So I think we all have an interest in that. Nika comes to us through different connections I've had, and she is certified functional nutritionist. And what's the CHC?
That's a certified functional nutrition counselor.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
and CHC is certified health coach.
Health coach as well. So there's a lot of great things that she's learned in her practice, and I'm going to let her kind of take over from here. But thank you all for coming. I'll have some announcements afterward. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Sally with Vessel Health Business Development, and we're happy to see you. So
awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Sally.
you.
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming. Yeah. To those of you watching online as well, thank you. For those online, if you have questions, please feel free to chime in. Hopefully I can hear them. For those of you who can talk out loud, and then Sally, maybe if you see anything that pops up too, we can catch those too. So like Sally said, my name is Nika Lawrie. I'm a functional nutrition counselor and certified health coach, and I started my own business a couple years ago. I work with clients specifically on mental health and metabolic syndrome. I do help with other things as well, but kind of metabolic syndrome is sort of my expertise in that sense. And in the sense of education, I really focus on environmental toxins. And the reason I focus on environmental toxins is because I had the privilege of spending about a decade working for the Alzheimer's Association. And the thing that kept popping up for me over and over and over again was that there likely isn't going to be a treatment or cure for the disease, and it's really going to be all about prevention. And the two things that show up over and over and over again in all of the research around Alzheimer's disease was diet and lifestyle, so really looking at nutrition, and the avoidance of environmental toxins. And so that's really kind of what sparked my passion to kind of go in this direction. And then the reason I really started focusing on metabolic syndrome is because the vast majority of Americans, even if they haven't been diagnosed with some type of disease that falls in metabolic syndrome, likely have it. And so oftentimes that comes from a blood sugar issue, or it can come from a nutritional deficiency or an environmental toxin exposure. And that's not necessarily acute. It can be long-term and extreme exposure to lots of different toxins. And so we'll talk about a little bit of that here through the presentation as well. But again, if you guys have questions, ask me along the way too. So that's kind of the short thing of who I am and why I got interested in this and why I share this information with everybody. I think to kind of jump into it, I want to talk about the top 4 or 5, maybe 6 toxins that I see a lot of people exposed to that don't realize that they are having detrimental effects on our health, and they can impact lots of different areas of our health. So I'll run through them very quickly, and then I will kind of break down a little bit more of what those big 5 or 6 are. So the first one would be phthalates. Then you have parabens. Bisphenol, so you hear like BPA oftentimes, but there's actually lots of different types of bisphenol. There's going to be, let me grab my list here so I can run through all the other things too. PFAS, pesticides, and then the last one I want to talk about is actually going to be refined sugar and fructose specifically, because you hear a lot about high fructose corn syrup, which it is just as scary as they all make it out to be. But I want to talk about fructose and what it specifically is and how it functions in the body, and why we need to really be aware of fructose specifically as a toxin. Even though people think, well, it's food, it's in our food, you know, we eat it all the time, it's generally regarded as safe, or it's on the GRAS list. But in reality, fructose is very, very detrimental to our health. And so we'll talk about that a little bit too. So I know I ran through those really quickly, so we're going to kind of work through them one by one. So ask me questions as you guys have them. So first one I want to talk about is phthalates. So the thing with phthalates is that it kind of works in 2 areas. So phthalates are They help make plastics hard. They can be used for the structure of plastics, but they can also be used in fragrances. And that's the bigger area that you tend to see them. So when we think about fragrances, we're going to think about perfumes, aromas, what's the other terms? Listed as fragrances. I couldn't think of it. So when we think about the ingredients in our personal care products, in our makeup products, in our lotions, like hand lotion is probably the most common one. So our scented candles is a big one. So these phthalates are used to help the fragrance last longer. So a big example I would say is the scented lotions. If you've ever put one on that has kind of the chemical scented lotion, they last all day, right? That smell, or you maybe put a sweater on afterwards, and then a week later you go to that sweater, it still smells like that lotion. That's the phthalates in the ingredients that's making that last a long time. Those phthalates can either be the fragrance itself or helping it last longer. And the issue with this is that the manufacturers don't actually have to tell you that phthalates are being used in the products. There is a kind of loophole that the government has given manufacturers to allow phthalates to be in these products. And that's the aroma or fragrance loophole. And so when you look at ingredients on personal care products, you'll see, water and glycerin and all of these different things, and then you'll see perfume or aroma or fragrance listed in the ingredients. Well, that can be any number of up to potentially about 80,000 chemicals. Not that they're using 80,000 chemicals in the product, but it can be any number. You could have 15, you could have 20, you could have 40 different chemicals just under that little perfume tag in the ingredients. And they don't have to list it because it's considered, what's the word I'm looking for? Proprietary. They don't have to tell you what it is. And you have to be really careful because these things can be hidden pretty easily under clean ingredients. So an example, I was actually at Target yesterday and they had this little section of perfume bottles, and up the top, I even took a picture of it because I got so frustrated by it. They had a sign that said, clean beauty, all your favorite stuff without all the gunk. And so I was really excited because potentially maybe there's perfumes that don't have these phthalates in it. I turned over the bottles, I looked at 3 or 4 bottles in this clean beauty section, and they all still listed fragrances or aromas. And maybe potentially they're using essential oils, but it's highly unlikely because the essential oils don't last as long and they are much more expensive. And so you have to be really diligent when we look at these products.
So essential oils are better than?
Essential oils, if they're true essential oils, so you have to be careful when you actually buy, like when you're buying those little bottles of essential oils, some of them are actually made with synthetic chemical scents, so potentially phthalates. So you have to look for ones that say real essential oils that don't have perfume or aroma listed in the ingredients, and they're coming from a verified source. So not all companies, like if you go online to buy a kind of packet of aromatherapy essential oils, you really need to look and make sure that these really are natural essential oils opposed to the synthetic fragrances. And the easy way to kind of start to tell the difference is if it's say like lavender or rosemary or tea tree oil, those are more likely going to be actual essential oils. If you see like vanilla or snickerdoodle or caramel, apple cake or something like that, those are going to be synthetic chemicals. And so that's kind of starts to make it a little bit easier to at least tell with the aromatherapy side of it. When it comes to lotions, it's really starting to understand the products and the companies, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the apps that can be useful tools that will help you actually identify clean products versus potentially toxic products. So that's kind of a general overview of phthalates. It's real basic. There's a ton of things to go into it, but I wanted to tell you the reason I want you guys to be aware of these chemicals is they are linked to a whole host of issues. So asthma, ADHD, breast cancer, obesity, type 2 diabetes, behavioral issues in kids, autism, male infertility and altered reproductive development. That's this, I put down a little list so I could keep them for each one. But there's a whole host of other health concerns that come along with them. And that's just phthalates.
Phthalates in water bottles, or do water bottles have phthalates in them?
That's going to be bisphenol. So
Bisphenol.
bisphenol, yeah. So bisphenol, I'll skip down to that one. So bisphenol, so usually we hear about BPA, right? There was a big push a couple of years ago to get rid of plastic water bottles, to remove BPA from all of our plastic products. Kind of the mom army went out there and went to all these manufacturers and said, we need to get this out of our products, especially stuff that we're using for our children. And that movement was great, essentially, because it did get BPA removed from a lot of products. But what the manufacturers did was then they turned to bisphenol S or bisphenol F. There's actually bisphenol from A to Z, and then there's a couple others sort of like bisphenol AB. And so there's this whole series of bisphenols. Bisphenols, no matter if they're A, B, S, F, whatever they are, still have the same endocrine disrupting properties that bisphenol A has. And so really what you want to do is avoid plastic as much as possible when it comes to use towards your food or anything that you would store something in. So thinking about plastic water bottles, thinking about our storage containers like Tupperware, things like that. Thinking about the other big place where bisphenol is often hidden is actually in canned food, which most people are not aware of. The lining of,
I was just gonna say they do.
yeah, the lining of cans.
What about buying food that's in a plastic container? They have thousands of things like bitchin' sauce.
Yeah, and so
You know.
usually it's the hard plastic. It's usually the hard plastic, so it's not necessarily the plastic that's kind of soft, like thinking about Ziploc bags. Bisphenol is usually not in soft plastics,
But in a form
fit, yeah. And
Yeah.
So,
So you shouldn't even buy anything that's in plastic.
ideally, you want to avoid all of that, both for your health and sustainability, I will say.
Right.
So if you can avoid it, that's not always necessarily possible. Right. So the biggest thing we want to look at is getting rid of the plastic water bottles, replace them. Like I have a stainless steel one here. You can do the glass option. So really trying to keep your water away from the plastic containers and then getting rid of your plastic Tupperware containers. If you are going to use plastic Tupperware containers, the two things I will say there is make sure that you don't do anything acidic or fatty, or don't heat it up. You especially don't want to put it in the microwave. When I talk about acidic or fatty, think about like tomato sauce or pasta sauce, right? They have a lot of acidity.
So that wears away the plastic or
like,
leaches
you know
into
how
it.
you think about you put spaghetti in a plastic Tupperware and then it has that stained orange color afterwards, right? Well, that's where the bisphenol has actually been bleached from the plastic and absorbed
Good to
into
know.
the
Look
food,
at that.
and then you're
Oh
ingesting
my
it.
God.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
lovely.
And so the big thing
I
with
have piles of plastic containers.
yeah, and that's the biggest thing. And so what I would say is, this can be really overwhelming and scary at first. Start small and start replacing things as you go.
And the hard plastic water bottles are just as bad as the thinner ones that crush and all that.
Yeah. You want to get rid of them as much as possible.
I a lot of times will reuse a water bottle that fill with my own water, and I usually just drink it right away. And if I don't drink it right away, I throw it off, throw it away. Is that not maybe too dangerous?
I mean, that's better. It's still no guarantee that you're not going to get it, because it can still leach out just in the time that it's sitting there. The biggest thing that you want to think about is like all the plastic water bottles that we've had. Like you buy the packs of plastic water bottles, right? Well, you don't actually know where those water bottles have been, how long the water's been sitting there. Have they been sitting in hot storage centers for weeks or months prior to coming to the grocery store? And so that's given a lot of time for that bisphenol to then leach into the water, and then you're ingesting it.
Oh, great.
So and so the bisphenol, the things to think about here is health effects on the brain and the prostate gland specifically, especially in children and infants. So this is going to affect their development. It's going to affect behavioral issues in children. They've even tested the the umbilical cord for fetuses, and they found bisphenol along with about 240 other toxic chemicals. So before the children are even born, they're dealing with this kind of
Oh
thing.
my gosh. They're in the
Yeah.
womb, and that's
So-
forming on the
This is
umbilical
from
cord.
the mother
Right.
intaking from just eating normally, she thinks
Wow.
she's eating
Yes.
healthy and doing
Right.
what she can. She's still,
Right.
the child still faces
Right.
these kind of toxic chemicals.
Wow.
The other things to think about specifically here for vessel health and think about cardiovascular disease, bisphenol can have a pretty major impact on cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. So thinking about that metabolic syndrome again, right? And one of the ways that it does this is it disrupts our endocrine system, which is our hormone system and our signaling or messaging system of our body. There was an interesting study that came out a couple years ago looking at specifically type 2 diabetes and environmental toxins. And they actually compared it to sugar intake versus environmental toxin exposure, and then matched that up with type 2 diabetes. And the line on the graph, the correlation line, so I will say correlation, not causation here, but correlation was much closer for toxins and type 2 diabetes than sugar intake, the increase of sugar intake over time. And they looked at it over a 100-year period. And so something to really be aware of is these toxins are really impacting our health. And we're not necessarily aware of it because we always think about acute toxin exposure, right? So somebody gets mercury poisoning or lead poisoning, or, they've been exposed to glyphosate because they've been gardening too much, and then they sprayed on the lawns, right? So we think about these acute exposures. We're not thinking about long-term chronic exposures to these, and when they impact our insulin receptors, our dopamine and serotonin receptors, all sorts of other hormones are impacted. Estrogen's a big one. Estrogen and testosterone are big ones that are impacted. These have drastic impacts on our health day to day. They have drastic impact on our mitochondria that create the energy that we feel and use throughout the day.
Wow.
And they have huge impacts on our brain function and our mental health. So it's kind of this whole circle that we have to look at. So.
And I'm just curious, okay, that was a diabetes study sort of, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, when you say this, I'm wondering, because that was over 100-year span of research. If they were to look at that, or has it been researched where the accumulative usage of this toxin being ingested, how it affects the hormone levels, like you said, estrogen and testosterone, in the wake of, like so many women. I was watching something this morning about, the postmenopausal and perimenopausal and all the things that, because the three big things that you have to look for is brain health, bone health, and there was the third one. They were all very serious, actually.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, poor women. It's like, I'm serious, but it's men too. I mean, there is estrogen, I mean, not estrogen, but testosterone levels decline. But it's just amazing to me that in the bad sense that nobody's really kind of pointed that out before.
Yeah.
Because these are the things that medical practitioners and researchers are finding out when you get to that stage in life. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the hard thing about that, one of the reasons why this is still kind of a new science in the sense of the medical world, people are just starting to really pay attention to toxin exposure, is because it's really, really hard to do studies on a specific toxin, because we're exposed to all kinds of toxins all over the place all the time. And so it's really hard to do that specific acute exposure, right? Go ahead.
I just have one question. So what if the plastic food is in the plastic, but it's frozen? Does it exchange when it's frozen?
Anytime food has just plastic, there's going to be an exposure.
Even if it's really icy?
Anytime
Nice.
anytime.
Okay.
It gets
So
worse.
I should get everything
the
out of my
hotter it
freezer and
Yeah, so your best bets there are going to be, you can use the Ziplocs, though sustainably wise, this is probably not the best option, but Ziplocs are going to be a safer alternative.
okay.
They have a lot of the wax wrap things. That
I
you
like
can
the wax
use.
wraps, yeah.
So that's not necessarily going to work for the freezer, but at least
Right.
works for the fridge.
Right.
You can use the glass Tupperwares. There are
Yeah.
some that
Yes.
you can freeze, some glass Tupperwares, so you'll want to check that.
Yeah,
So the glass option is going to be the best option to
Okay.
replace the
just
plastic.
checking.
I do use a
Yeah.
lot of glass now and that, but I mean, they may have, well, this is a question because I do have both enameled metal containers that are, I love them actually because things stay really nice and cold. And then I have the glass, but they come with plastic lids.
Yeah, so I have ones that have plastic lids. I just make sure that the food is low enough
Doesn't,
that
right,
it doesn't
okay,
touch the top.
okay.
Yeah, because it's hard to find the ones that don't
It
have
is,
anything.
yeah, that's what I
You-
have at
You
home. I use
can
those.
find them that have the silicone
Uh-huh,
lids, and
right,
silicone, as long as it's food grade silicone, it comes from
Okay.
a reputable manufacturer, is
Mhm.
gonna be okay. Silicone, there, as of right now, as far as we know, and the research has been done, there's no health concerns, toxicity wise to silicone, as long as it's a high quality food grade.
mhm,
So that's the one you really want to look for. So
Mhm.
same thing when you're thinking about your cooking utensils. So those
Mm-hmm.
kind of cheap plasticky ones, you want to replace those with the silicone or wood option.
Right.
So that's going to be your best bet there.
yeah.
Mhm.
Jeez.
It-
After all these years, we're listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's that, but you know, if you start little steps day by day,
Mhm.
you can start to make the impact. And it really does matter over time as well too. Talking about the estrogen, I wanted to talk about parabens because that's one of the big things that we really want to look at specifically for women. It can impact males as well, but specifically for women, parabens can they're again an endocrine disruptor, but the biggest thing that they can do is either increase the natural amount of estrogen that's inside a human or that a woman is producing, or it can mimic estrogen, and so our bodies see it as estrogen and then react to it in that sense as well. And that can cause a whole bunch of issues.
Yeah.
Thinking about our menstrual cycles, thinking about menopause and perimenopause, thinking about
Cancers.
cancers is the next one I was going to say. So we think about all of these
Wow.
estrogen dominant cancers that women are facing these days. There's a lot of research coming out saying that, we need to get rid of these parabens because of the impact it's having on estrogen.
What's parabens?
So parabens are a compound that's used as a preservative.
Mhm.
It's usually used in personal care and cosmetic products. So we're thinking again about lotions,
Mhm.
thinking again about shampoos and conditioners, beauty products like makeup. Makeup's a big one, especially for the women that wear really heavy foundation, a lot of contouring products, those kind of things. Those are going to have a lot of parabens in them as well. Not all makeup has it. You can find makeup that doesn't have
And
it.
it has to say it on it?
Yeah, the
Probably.
best way, so I was gonna save it for afterwards, but I think we'll just kind of bring it up now. There are some apps that you can use. My favorite app is called Yuka, Y-U-K-A, and you can download it for free. And you can just scan barcodes on
Yeah, I would do that.
on bottles of lotion or
Cool.
shampoo and conditioner. And it'll tell you in a pretty simple rating system. So green being good and red being bad, yellow somewhere in the middle, and you can decide what your comfort level is. It'll tell you how toxic this product is. And they cover mostly personal care and makeup products. But the nice thing about the Yuka app, which I have no actual personal connection to, I just like the app. The thing I like about it is that you scan a product, and if it comes back highly toxic or up in the red area, it'll recommend other products to you
Nice.
that are going to be a cleaner alternative. And so, when you're going to the store to buy something new, say you run out of shampoo, use up your shampoo now if you want to. If you want to do the whole cleanup and clean out your house, you can do that too, but I know this can be overwhelming for people.
Mhm.
And so as things run out, go to the store and find a new product that you like. And so if you want to go buy a new shampoo and conditioner, just scan the barcode real quick while you're at the store. And then if it's toxic, it'll give you some recommendations for alternatives that you can buy. And then usually those are in the store because it's usually pretty general in the sense of brands. And then you can pick the brand that is going to be the least toxic option that you're comfortable with. And so it's an easy tool to use. to help you through the process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So,
It's
yeah,
great, actually, because I'm looking at this, looking at, like, as soon as you mentioned the phthalate, I was
It's,
like, oh my gosh, that's probably in so many
it's
things.
in almost everything.
Yeah.
It is in almost every product.
And this is one of those that's supposed to be such a healthy little product.
And
And,
that's,
you know, it has, oh, and that brings up something too. At some point, I was curious, you know, all the symbols.
yeah.
I mean, do they really mean anything?
I mean, there are some, but in general, it's usually just a marketing ploy that
Yeah.
they use.
that's what I thought.
You know, and I would say like the vegan one, for instance.
Yeah,
That a vegan, that's great if you're a vegan and that's important to you.
right.
That does not mean that these toxic chemicals are not in the product. Same thing you think about with food as well. I know we're not really talking about the chemicals specifically in food right now.
Okay.
That's a whole other session we could do. But you know, you think about natural or organic flavors, natural flavors, artificial flavors, organic or natural products. Those are all just kind of marketing terms.
Right.
The only time you can trust if a product has actually been verified is if it has that USDA verified organic. It's the only time you can actually trust that a product is organic. And the other one to know about is, sorry, I'm getting a phone, you hit the red thing. I'm getting a phone
I'm
call.
sorry, Matt.
The other thing to think about is the non-GMO product. So when you see it's usually a little square box and it'll say non-GMO,
Mhm.
that's the only other label that's really a verified
I do
marketing
look for that.
label.
Okay.
The rest are usually just kind of marketing.
Right,
you
just
know,
make it look good,
choice.
sound good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you have to be really careful about that kind of in the health food area
Mhm,
too, as well, because there's lots of marketing that they use in that sense. So,
Right,
yeah.
right.
Anyways, back to the other toxins I want to talk about. So PFAS is another big one. PFAS is something that's kind of really terrifying to me opposed to these other chemicals. These other chemicals are really scary for sure. But the thing with PFAS is that they are actually forever chemicals. So these chemicals
Yeah,
have
that's
been
great.
created, and there are
not
some
on
that
there, right?
will biodegrade in 400 to 1,000 years. There are many PFAS that will never biodegrade. There is no way that we know of currently at this time to get rid of these PFAS.
How is that spelled?
What's PFA?
So PFA is PFA', and that's an abbreviation for pre or poly flu or alcohol. I can never say the end.
I know.
So pre and or poly flu or alcohol.
Okay.
So PFAS, if you just Google PFAS,
Mhm.
PFA',
Mhm.
you'll be able to find tons about PFAS. So the main places that PFAS are used is in nonstick or water resistant. So we're thinking about our nonstick cookware, right? Our pots and pans that have the Teflon.
Mhm.
So we've heard recently about the whole DuPont debacle, right? All these PFAS were then filtered into the water.
Mm.
The water system it was toxic, and it made all these people sick, and they had to sue DuPont. It was this whole long thing. There was a movie that came out a couple years
Yeah.
ago about it, so it's kind of been up in the news a lot. There are thousands and thousands of manufacturers that use PFAS. And the interesting thing was they did a study a couple years ago. They tried to find people in the world that hadn't been exposed to PFAS. They literally went all over the world. They went to the depths of the Amazon to find the humans that, you know, have never been exposed, like that live still in their little tribes kind of in Amazon.
Right.
Even they tested the blood of these people. Even they had been exposed to PFAS. And PFAS build up in your system over time. You actually don't detoxify them. They never leave your body. And so it's very, 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 very scary in that sense. And so we're thinking about how do we avoid these chemicals, right? So two extent we can't avoid them because they've kind of been put everywhere on everything.
Mhm.
But the biggest way that you can start to avoid them in your own environment is avoiding the Teflon
Mhm.
materials, so anything that's non-stick.
Mhm.
You really want to stick to just plain stainless steel cookware or
Iron.
yeah,
Is
the
that okay?
iron, yeah,
Okay.
the iron, the carbonite, iron carbonite ones are okay as well. The cast irons
Yeah,
are okay
that's-
as well. So those
okay.
are really the only three. The
Wow.
stainless steel, you have to make sure that they have not been coated.
Right,
with
mine
the-
hasn't, because everything
yeah.
sticks to it.
Yeah, if it sticks, you're good.
I bought a little pan at Walmart that looks copper, but it's kind of got a shiny surface. Is that
Got a
possibly?
finish on it.
Probably has a coating on it. There's, I mean, there's no guarantee, but I would say more than likely
Yeah.
it has a coating on it.
Almost all
Yeah.
my pans have a or, you know,
Most
there's something on
cookware
them.
has a coating on it.
Yeah, most of them do.
So,
Wow.
yeah. So the best option is to opt for the stainless steel or cast iron.
Everything sticks to
So-
stainless steel. I hate stainless
Yeah.
steel.
It does, you have to
That
put,
cast iron makes it taste good.
Yeah.
it
I
does.
always cooked
I
on
like
cast iron
cast
before.
iron.
Okay,
bought
I
this
love
little
ca-
pan.
So if it's got
I have
enamel
all
on the
sizes.
cast iron, you know, like Le Creuset or, you know,
Yeah.
that's good.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
those
so-
are great, those are great.
That's
I would
baked
think,
on, that's a
right?
different thing.
Yeah, so ceramic is a whole different option. There's a big push recently or kind of in popularity to switch to ceramic alternatives for cookware. Ceramic's really debatable because there are a lot of ceramics that are still coated in a non-stick coating. And so you have to really do your research there.
Mhm.
And then a lot of the ceramics that are not coated in that don't.
Hello, I cook with all ceramic now.
Oh,
You do?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So sometimes the ceramics that are not coated don't withstand long use.
Huh?
They're not as
What?
durable.
Wait,
So it
wait,
just-
wait. The what? Huh?
level is there.
It
What?
might depend on the brand she's saying as far as if they're coated or not.
Yeah.
Oh, they're coated.
They are coated?
Yes, and they clean very well.
Okay.
And you don't care.
So they are likely.
I'm not judging because I don't.
I have
I'm trying to put it in a chat, but
And there's like stained and stuff like that even. It doesn't like, I guess, I don't know if the coating was ever there. I mean, they still have the enamel.
Yeah.
But
it
they're
it
just
depends
old
on
and-
the
it's
brand.
it's not as bad as Teflon though. You know,
Yeah.
Right.
Teflon's, you know,
A lot of pans and they're supposed, but they're supposed to be really good brands and I've gotten them over the years, you know,
Oh, I know, that's the
but I
thing.
don't know, they could.
Supposed to be.
Huh?
There's your-
those- so that's what I mean. You know, you just never freaking know.
I didn't hear that.
Serious.
She was
I
making
know.
a joke.
Oh, okay, okay. So the other place that you'll find PFAS is in water resistant clothing. So thinking about our rain gear.
Oh,
So you'll want to, you know, if we're looking at the jackets that we wear out, the boots that have been sprayed in the materials, the water doesn't absorb, those kind of things. Those are usually treated with PFAS as
Yeah.
well.
Okay,
Rain's
what?
good.
Raincoat in the car.
Yeah, not here in New Mexico at least, but
Rain,
yeah. And then the last one is fire retardant, and
Mm.
we don't see fire retardant as much, but you know, the 80s and 90s, I know fire retardant was a really big thing, and that was actually a push from the cigarette companies to make everything fire retardant, so the cigarette companies would not
Have
be,
these
held-
lawsuits.
held responsible for the lawsuits when the
Oh, those dirty-
cigarette burned down the home.
Dirty birds.
But the places to look for fire retardant are mattresses, sleepwear, especially kids' sleepwear is a big one. And then bedding as well. You don't see it as much anymore, but you'll want to check your labels on those things to make sure that you don't
Yeah.
have fire.
A total diversion from our food supply, right?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
this is more in apparel that
Well,
you'll
that's what I
find.
mean. It's a total diversion from, you know, our
Yeah.
food supply. You know,
Yeah.
I have a heating blanket that's probably fire retardant and it's heating, so that's probably worse.
Worse, yeah.
Now, you shouldn't sleep under it.
Where- Anyway, yeah.
Right.
And so I have an electric blanket that I'll use sometimes in the winters.
Yeah,
But I usually have like cotton PJs underneath.
Yeah, and maybe a
And so
sheet.
I have something between the two. And so if
Right.
you have clothing in between the two,
well,
then at least you
yeah, I
have
had a
that.
sheet in between.
Yeah, then you have that
That's
guard
probably
at
better.
least. So that's a better option.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because it's not making direct contact with
Yeah,
the
you
skin.
just don't want it on your skin.
That makes
Okay.
sense. So then I'm okay with my raincoat.
Depends. I mean, if
I
you
don't-
really
Not
oh.
nude
your
underneath.
skin-
You can't go through everything, yeah.
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 It's only for emergencies.
And but I haven't
anyway.
thrown it in the car just because, yeah, I don't even put it on unless it's gonna rain.
And you can look at your.
What about umbrellas?
So I have a rain jacket that's actually just a plastic material. It
Mhm.
has not been treated.
That's
with
what this one
PFAS.
is, so I'm wondering if
Yeah,
it
and
was
so you
even
can,
treated.
sometimes you can look at the
I'll
label
look.
and
How
see
do
what
you-
kind of chemicals are,
Huh.
what it's been treated with.
Wow.
There, yeah. So
Wow.
talking about food supply, pesticides are gonna be the next one
Yeah.
to really
Yeah.
think about. And I heard a fascinating conversation the other day with Stephanie Steff. She is a MIT researcher, and she has published several books and articles on glyphosate. And the interesting thing that she was talking about was the impact that glyphosate has on our ability to absorb nutrients. And when glyphosate bonds to nutrients, specifically in things like grains, it actually blocks our ability to absorb those nutrients.
Huh.
And so that was fascinating to me because we think about all the things that glyphosate is sprayed on. So, specifically the wheat and grain agriculture that we eat so often.
Right.
Not only is the glyphosate affecting our health and causing damage inside us, it's also preventing us from the ability to absorb the nutrients that are coming from those foods. So
Can
know.
you- I know.
See all your faces.
So
I
that
know,
means
'cause
organic.
I'm big about, well, you were talking about your grains earlier, and I'm like Miss Oat, I eat oats every day. So I'm wondering if that's, yeah, can you even see that on a label? Would it even show up?
Is organic, would it,
Organics can be the option that you want to
Right.
go for.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so the best way to avoid herbicides, pesticides is to go organic.
And look for that FDA
And
label.
look for that
Mhm.
label. Yeah, that's gonna be
I
your
think it's
best
on there.
option
It's on the
there.
box.
Um,
Smells.
And the thing to realize that there are tons of different types of pesticides. So we have
Yeah.
fungicides, herbicides,
Yeah.
insecticides, right? So there's tons of different types. But there's several big chemicals that we really have to kind of be aware of. Glyphosate is absolutely the biggest one.
Good to know.
And it is sprayed on so many things. And so the best option there is to go organic when possible, as much as possible. The big one that I would say, if there's nothing else you can do, if you refuse to buy organic and you just want to stick to your general conventionally grown ones, please buy organic apples. Those are the ones that are sprayed more than any other fruit or vegetable out there. And because you eat the skin of the fruits, you are directly eating the chemical. Even if you wash it, it's been absorbed into.
so what about stuff like
Fruit.
grapes? I mean, and celery, we always heard, don't ever buy celery if it's not organic.
Yeah, so
And all the berries and,
so berries, yeah, so apples are the biggest one. Berries I would say is the second one. So blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, those are the big ones. Blueberries and strawberries are the bigger two.
I heard that. about
Raspberries will come
strawberries.
in third. Spinach is another big one. You really want to go for organic spinach. And if you want an easy list to look at the Environmental Working Group. They have a dirty dozen and a clean 15 list.
I've seen that.
So the dirty dozen are going to be the top 12 vegetables, fruits and vegetables that are the highest have the highest exposure to some type of pesticide, usually glyphosate, but there's lots of other ones as well. And so those, if you want to start there, those are the 12 that you definitely want to buy.
and what's the name of the thing we look up?
Environmental Working Group. So you can actually go to ewg.org. And it's usually right on their homepage, but you can look at the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. The Clean 15 are going to be the opposite. So those are going to be the fruits and vegetables that it's okay, or it's quote unquote safe to buy conventionally grown. I still tend to really just try to do organic as
Mhm.
much as possible.
Mhm.
But there are times that I will go conventional if they just don't have the organic.
Right, that happens.
One
sometimes.
kind of tool to kind of keep with you is usually if it has a skin that you're going to peel off. So we're thinking bananas, avocados, oranges. Those are going to be a safer, again, quote unquote, safer option to buy conventional opposed to organic. That doesn't guarantee that you're not going to have any exposure, but at least it'll limit some of your exposure if you're peeling
Mhm.
off the thing.
Mhm.
Now, if you're zesting the orange or zesting
Right.
the lemons, that you want to go for
Mhm.
organic.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Any questions on those?
I have a general question on pesticides, and this is specific to me. I live near a farm,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
across the street, maybe 100 yards from my well, there are fields that they've been watering and maybe pesticiding. Is there some way to find out how fast that might devolve down through the soil and into my well?
So not necessarily how fast, but you could definitely have your water tested.
Yeah, that's what
yeah.
I was thinking.
So
Yeah.
TAP score is a great place to go.
Where?
TAP score, so TAP, TAP
Mhm.
score.com. They will do water testing for you.
Nice.
And then they will actually show you if you do come back with some type of chemical or toxin in your water, they'll show you the best filter options specifically for the chemicals that are in your water in order to remove those.
Mm.
So, but you have to pay for each kind of test they run. That could be very expensive.
Yeah, so they have different levels. They have one that's I think $150. They have one that's like $250, and one that's like $500. So it's definitely a cost. But it's a one-time cost and it'll give you that big picture.
Mhm.
So it kind of depends there. The other two things that you can do, it may not be specific to the agricultural chemicals in your area,
Mhm.
but you can look at both, again, the environmental working group or the local municipality. So Albuquerque here will give you a score, a water score of the chemicals that are
I've
here.
heard that.
The environmental working group, you can type in your zip code and they'll give you a score for your specific area. I know I've done it for Albuquerque. We're not the worst, but we are not the best. And
Right.
so something to kind of be aware of there. When it comes to thinking about water filters, there's a bunch of different options at a bunch of different price levels. The biggest one, if you really want to go deep dive into it and can afford to do it, is going to be a whole house filtration system.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Those can run from $2,000 to $6,000, so they can be really expensive, but potentially worth it, especially if you're looking at agricultural toxins through. One thing to think about is that, we think about the water we drink, but we don't think about the water that we shower in or the water we cook with. If I can get you to do one more thing, so filter the water you drink, but also filter the water that you cook with, because again, that's absorbing into the food that we're going to eat,
Mhm.
think like pastas, things
Mhm.
like that, and we're going to ingest it. So at least filtering those two. The other place is our skin actually absorbs more toxins than
It's a
almost
membrane,
anything
so, yeah.
else. So inhaling and digesting is the biggest, but our skin really absorbs a lot of toxins. And so when we shower, there's a lot of chemicals that can come through the water that end up on our skin and we end up absorbing.
So shower less.
We all through the pandemic, so.
So, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, yeah, what's the difference between, because we see it as, soft water,
Mhm.
filtered water, is softened water, filtered water?
So
So
yes and no. So soft water, a lot of times they'll add some chemicals.
Treat it.
to Treat it, yeah, to make it softer.
Like potassium,
Yeah, but
which
it
is
doesn't
like
necessarily.
slime on your body.
Yeah,
I
it doesn't
hate it.
necessarily remove the toxins.
Mhm.
The thing to also think about is the municipalities, the ones who are managing our water systems.
Mhm.
They have about 70 chemicals that they are required by law to make sure that they test for and look at and make sure that they don't cross a certain threshold that's considered safe for us.
Mhm.
Those thresholds are highly debated by environmental health
For
researchers
sure.
and the government. And so that health level doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe.
Right.
The other thing is that there's about 200 other chemicals that are tested in water fairly regularly that are not required to be filtered out or even tested for by the municipalities.
Right,
So-
don't they add fluoride to our water here and
They
stuff
have
like that?
fluoride, yeah,
Yeah.
which can also cause some health
Right.
concerns as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of chlorine's another
Yeah,
big one.
yeah.
So there's lots of different things in that sense. So the other option too is if you can't do a whole house filtration, you can do a osmosis filtration that clicks onto your under the sink system for your kitchen. That can be a great alternative. Those you can actually get at the hardware store for about $200 to $250. It's a little bit more price effective, but you do have to pay for the filters every 6 months. That's about a $70 fee for those. The least option or the least expensive option at the minimum, I would say, is if you have a fridge that has a filter, make sure that you're filtering your cooking and drinking water and replacing those filters often, because two things. One, all the chemicals have been filtered through that filter then sit in it, and so you don't want it
Right.
to overload, right?
Right,
The other thing is the bacterial buildup
Yeah.
on those filters can grow and spread, and you don't want that bacteria in your system.
Okay.
The last option, which I don't recommend, but for those who have no other option, is doing the Brita filter
yeah,
things, and so you can do those in your fridge.
reuse those here.
But again, then your water's sitting in a plastic container.
I was just gonna
So
say,
as long as
yeah.
you're drinking it quickly, then you're a little safer, but it's still not a great option there. So usually I recommend the reverse osmosis under your sink. But the one side with that is that it's not necessarily an eco-friendly option too. So usually for about 3 gallons of water that's filtered, you usually get 1.5 to 2 gallons of clean water. And so about a gallon of that is lost in the filtration system. You're really concerned about preserving water and saving water, that can be an issue.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Why those reverse those things in plastic containers too?
Most of them actually come with so some of them, yeah, some of the filters are plastic, but a lot of them will actually come in a stainless steel system.
talking? Who's talking now?
The carbon that it runs through, and then once it filters into the holding container, that's usually a stainless steel container. It looks a lot like the propane containers that we think about, those kind of round things. It's a little bit smaller like that. It's I think it's a 2-gallon container.
like a
that.
cylinder.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question now?
Of course.
Okay, I have an RO system, and I had a water softener, and instead of water softener, I went to this magnetic system, to where, you know, they put these magnets on your piping that kills the scale on your pipes, which is much more cost efficient. But I'm wondering about my RO system. I change the filters every 6 months. So is that good?
Yeah, so as long as, if that's what the filtration system calls for, is every 6 months, which tends to be pretty standard, I would say good, yeah.
Okay.
You make sure you stay on.
Yeah, because Albuquerque's water is getting worse and worse. And since we had that Rio Chama thing, we're
Yeah.
getting all that waste from Los Alamos, which is not a good thing.
Worse.
So, yeah, so watch out for that.
I do it once a year. I
Good to
always
know. Thanks, Sparky.
Yeah,
put it
you're
out.
welcome. You're welcome.
Say it needs it, so I shouldn't do that.
Look at the specific filter. Every filter has a different
It's just as long, yeah, it says,
time period.
it says when the
Sorry, I'm
thing
eating
on
the
the
plastic
refrigerator
bottle.
turns red.
Yep, that's how I just follow the signal on my refrigerator to do it that way. But every filter is going to be different.
Yeah.
So in most of them, the standard is usually 6 months, but some of them can be different.
It did.
So,
I was just
yeah.
gonna say it
I
turned
should
off.
keep track of the
wanted
time
to
to
be
see
sure.
if it's
Yeah.
really 6 months.
And then the Brita ones, for example, are much shorter. I think
Yeah.
those are 60 days.
So
Yeah.
you were going to tell us how to detox our body?
Yeah,
Well,
so
these are the tips.
yeah, so
Yeah.
this is
Yeah,
most
well,
the avoidance.
damage is already done, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Yeah, so I think to do a full body kind of detox presentation, I think that would be a whole nother hour presentation.
All right, all right.
A lot you can do. The biggest thing to start with is to start with avoidance,
Yeah.
trying to get the stuff out of your everyday environment.
Right.
For the next thing to really
I
look
got rid
at.
of all the plastics and all that stuff, so I'm on the right track, you know.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So the thing after that would be really looking at nutrition and making sure that we're getting.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. That's what I was looking at, more of the.
Sorry, I can't.
I'm gonna mute you real quick, or unless you have some more questions, anybody?
Okay.
You muted
Well,
him.
yeah, so the last thing I would say there is looking at getting your liver, your kidneys, and your digestive system. So specifically your gut, your microbiome at optimal health, because that's going to help you detoxify the chemicals.
Okay, yeah, I got, well.
Better. So we want those chemicals through the body as fast as possible. And if our liver or kidneys are backed up, which they often are from the food we're eating or other toxin exposure, those things.
Okay, I'll be dead in 10 years, don't fucking matter.
Fat specifically around our belly, but kind of
Yeah, the
all over
visceral.
our body. Yeah.
That's, so kind of like when we had the panel here doing the talk on some of the
Products.
supplements.
Uh-huh.
And then we also had Ashley, right before that, the month before that, do her talk on all the basically gut health and the brain. And that was really informative too. So, you know, your
Yeah, we're all about gut health now.
prebiotics.
So
probiotics.
probiotics,
Yeah,
that's
and
a
there's-
good thing.
Prebiotics.
Yeah.
The biggest thing you want to look at is high quality fiber. Making
Yeah.
sure that you.
I use a lot of fiber. In fact, I make these double bran muffins, which I think are the cure for my problem. I
Good for
really
you.
do. They're
Yeah.
wonderful. And rice bran, I read from an old book, is like 5 times as much soluble fiber in rice bran as in like oat bran.
Yeah.
Everything everything is the best, but rice bran is.
No,
much
rice
more
rice
fiber.
bran is good too, for sure.
Yeah.
The
really
thing
good.
that's important about that is that
The
we really
organic
need to look
flours,
at
or-
making sure that we have both types of fiber,
Mm.
soluble and non-soluble
Mhm.
fiber.
Yeah.
And often because we're getting it from powder forms or bottles and stuff
Mhm,
like that, it'll
mhm.
only be one or the other in the sense of types of fiber. And
Okay.
so the best way to get that is eating whole real foods, especially leafy greens, because you're
Mhm.
going to have both types of fiber there.
Mhm.
But really making sure that, like, if you're cooking with your soluble fiber, making sure that you're adding in some non-soluble as well to keep both
Mhm.
of those. And the fiber, it does 2 things. One, it feeds our microbiome, right? And so it helps our gut bugs stay really healthy and fed. And we want to keep those good gut bugs fed well, because that basically runs our whole body.
Mhm.
But on the other side of that is it also binds to a lot of these toxin chemicals. And so you're able to push it through your system and excrete it either through feces or urine and move it through your system as fast as possible. And so that fiber is so important for detoxifying the body.
That's great information. That is really good.
But it's mainly green leafy vegetables and then the brands also.
Yeah.
Well, you've got, you know, depending on the kind, I mean, there's fiber in fruits, there's
Yeah,
fiber in
there's
vegetables,
so
there's fiber.
apples is a great
Yeah.
place for fiber as long
Yeah.
as they're organic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so,
There's
yeah,
gazillion-
there's lots of places you can get fiber from, but making sure that, the best place is the whole real foods, whole
Mhm.
real organic foods, I should
Mhm.
say.
Mhm.
And then getting both those types of fiber.
And were you talking about, were you gonna talk about fructose and how it's gonna
Yeah,
kill
so
us?
I'm looking at
Oh,
the
yeah.
time.
Go
Do
ahead.
you want me to
You
finish
want-
on that
yeah,
one?
yeah,
or-
please,
Yeah,
yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, so the
Oh, I'm
last.
glad you did. Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
that's
so the
important.
last one I wanted to talk about was sugar and fructose. And so refined sugar, we're thinking about the thing that comes from sugarcane primarily, right? So, or beets, they often come from
Mhm.
beets as well. So that kind of that white powder thing that we see all the time, right?
Mhm.
Cakes and cookies and ice cream and all those kind of things. The other side of that is fructose, and fructose we often hear about as high corn syrup. What is it?
Oh my goodness.
Corn
Corn syrup.
Yeah.
The-
Corn syrup,
Corn
yeah.
syrup,
We know.
high fructose.
High fructose corn syrup.
Yeah, so we hear about that all the time, kind of as the boogeyman.
Mhm.
The reason fructose is so important to be aware of is that fructose actually runs straight through your body and goes directly to your liver. So it bypasses all of your other digestive areas and hits your liver. So when we think
Poor liver.
about, yeah, so we think about, you know, how our
Wow.
liver functions to clean out our body and to support all the other organs in our body. This, when fructose runs directly through to the liver, it really increases our level of insulin. It increases our fatty liver, the potential of having fatty liver disease. It'll increase the level of fat that you're actually going to start to gain around your belly, your visceral fat. And when that happens, all the other toxins that were also in your body that are in your liver are going to be pushed into that area. And so fructose can be really, really damaging on a whole host of levels, specifically because our body doesn't use it for anything else. It directly hits the liver, and then it doesn't necessarily get detoxed the same way other sugars would, like sucrose. And then the other thing, so the way we usually get fructose, it comes with refined sugar itself, but specifically is when it's been removed from the fiber that comes from other parts of a fruit or vegetable that you would eat. So think of like apples, for instance, right? When you eat the whole apple, you're getting the fiber and the fructose. And so you're able to digest it because you have all the fiber that's come with it, and it's going to move through your body. When you eat it, just the fructose, so thinking apple juice,
Right.
We feed apple juice to all of our kids all the time. That is just a, you know, bullet to your liver of toxicity. And so really trying to avoid that juice kind of thing, the high fructose corn syrups that are in sodas, that are in a lot of our baked goods, those kind of things. That's something you want to be aware of. And it can be hidden quite often in different names.
It's in so many things.
Yeah,
really.
but the big place to look are juices, sodas, and when it's specifically listed as high fructose corn
So
syrup.
real fruit isn't bad, you're saying?
Real fruit is not bad at all, because it comes with the fiber. Because it comes with the fiber and the vitamins and nutrients.
So you know Dr. Gundry, maybe you've seen the shows, he says eat local fruit in season,
Yes,
and that's
That
probably
is-
just the best.
a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
One, you're supporting local agriculture. Two,
Right.
your
It's
toxin
not-
load's gonna be less likely. You know where your food's coming from. You can usually tell.
How is all this added sugar bad? We never had this added sugar stuff before. What is that about?
Yeah, so added sugar is the other, so that's the refined sugar part. And so added sugar has been added to basically all.
Everything. I know.
Yeah, anything that's a manufactured product, right? And so one rule of thumb that you can kind of think about is if it was created in a facility, you don't want to eat it, right?
Okay, yeah.
So that's
Everything has added sugar. That's what I mean. It's like, how do you get away
Like
from it?
processed foods. So your
Processed
processed foods are gonna have that. I don't know if it's as.
So you're saying-
Everything has added sugar, whether it's
It's like-
processed or not.
Yeah, so I use honey. Honey will still increase your glucose level in your blood because it is, I can't remember the exact makeup. It's I can't remember the chemical compound of honey, but I think it's glucose and sucrose makes up honey. I could be wrong on
But you're
that.
saying it's
But
not bad, better than sugar.
Honey is going to be a better option than refined sugar. It's still going to increase your glucose level, which then will increase your insulin. So if you have an issue there, you want to avoid that. There are several sugars that you can look at that are less likely to increase your insulin levels. So thinking monk fruit for
I was just
some
gonna ask
people,
you that,
not
yeah.
all. Monk fruit is some. Stevia is sometimes an option. I use stevia very limitedly though, because it can affect your microbiome. It can mess with your gut bugs. So stevia is
I
kind of
don't
an
like the
okay.
taste, so.
I do not recommend agave. Agave will can impact your glucose levels. And then
They're
Erythro,
erythro something.
I'm sorry.
there's an erythro something.
Yeah, there's two others I'm drawing a blank on. Eucanin syrup. I can get you guys the actual name. Eucanin syrup is a big one. And that one is something I actually use quite often. I use that in place of honey or sugar in my tea. It still has a sweet flavor. It comes from a root, and it has quite a bit of fiber with it too. And so
Starts with a U or an E?
a U. It's like YUCANA or something like that. I can get you guys the actual name. I
I've
can't
seen
think
that.
of it. But that's a great option as well. So there are some alternatives, but the thing with all these alternatives is you have to see how it affects you specifically, because
Right.
everybody's going to be a little bit different in how they are impacted by the different types of sugar. The best option is that if you really are avoiding as many processed foods as often as possible, if you're really going for that whole clean food, your added sugar intake is going to be much lower. And so if you don't have, say, type 1 or type 2 diabetes, you aren't going to be affected quite as much by the little bit of sugar. Say if you added honey to your coffee, right? If you're avoiding all those other sugars. So it's figuring out where that line is for you. The best option though is to really try to avoid the added sugar in all the processed foods. And the interesting thing now is that the nutrition labels have recently been updated. There was a law that was passed a couple of years ago, but they are now required to list out added sugar in that. So
Yeah.
you can actually look at the nutrition label and see how much added sugar is into it.
Right. The grams are there. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes.
I look at that a lot.
Mhm.
Is that what you were asking and talking about too, Sparky? The added sugars?
Sparky signed off.
Oh, she did? Okay, thank you. That's all really good information. I don't know, I mean, there's so many, like you said, and I was gonna mention to anyone, every time that we host these and have speakers, it's always, you know, the great feedback is if there's more that you want to know and hear, then it would be, you know, another time to have you back and to,
Yeah.
you know, talk more about it, so.
Yeah, let me know. I can share my information too. So if people have
Yeah.
questions afterwards, I know it's a ton of information we just went through. So if you have questions.
No, that's great, and I'm happy to do that. We like to do that, Denise, you and I, as far as any of our attendees are welcome to, you know, look at the site that Nika has. I mean, if you were here, you'd see this, but I'm gonna put it up to the screen so you can see. We can give you her contact information. Whoa, no, look at my little fingers. Okay, now. We've got her contact information here in the office. I'll have these, but we can also send this out. And some
You have a
pamphlets. that
spare
we're-
card?
Yeah. And then the pamphlets too. With her website and all of that information on there.
Nice.
Okay. Denise, do you have any questions?
I don't, but you know, if you want to email me your website or any information, I'll attach it to my next email going out to the participants, and they can receive all that.
I love it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that. I'll give her your email address, or I can even send this to you, whichever works easiest. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That would be a big help.
Yeah.
And thank you, everybody, for coming. This was very informative.
Yay.
We learned a heck of a lot. Thank you, Nika.
Sorry to be a Debbie Downer.
Hey, we all have to learn this stuff sometime, even
Yeah.
if it is late, like you were saying.
Yeah.
We're all late to the party.
Yeah.
But thank you all very, very much for being here. And I will have some more information about our next speaker. I can just tell you that it's a doctor of Oriental medicine. She's probably going to talk about her practice and some of the things that she does with Chinese, Japanese, and Indian methods of practicing medicine. So I'll have more on that later, but I just wanted to thank you all again. And anything you want to know more about Moringa and Nika, I'll make sure you get it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I have a question about a neighbor of mine.